Hey everybody, my name is Asia and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. So I've always seen this tag going around on BookTube every single year, and I've always wanted to do it because it just seems like so much fun, and the fact that you get to compare how you felt from the middle of the year to the end of the year and seeing what stayed the same is just really fun and interesting to me, and I've seen so many people do this. I'm super excited to get into the questions and everything. Also remember, I'm going to be linking resources for the Black Lives Matter movement in the description of all my videos going forward, because this is just the beginning and we still need to make tiny changes and we still need to work to make change, because to get rid of systematic racism, it's not just a okay, we did something for a month, it's over. That's not really how it works, so we have to keep doing things to make change. I also want to be linking some resources for Yemen, which they're in the biggest humanitarian crisis for the past 100 years. So if you don't know anything about Yemen, since the media hasn't been talking about it, I would recommend looking at some of my resources down below for that as well. But with all that being said, let's just get straight into the questions. The first question is the best book that you've read in 2020 so far, and I'm actually going to go with 3 books because this year I've decided to be more critical with the books that I'm reading, and I'm only going to give 5 stars to things that I think are going to be my absolute favorites. I kind of would throw around 4 and 5 stars like all the time, but this year I've been making sure that I'm giving 5 stars to books that I really loved and not just books that I liked. So I have 3 books that I rated 5 stars so far this year. So the first book that I rated 5 stars this year was Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, and I love everything Cassandra Clare writes. She's one of my favorite authors ever, and she was my favorite author for a very long time. I don't really know if I know who my favorite author is right now, but Cassandra Clare is definitely up there. I love the Shadowhunters world so much. My favorite series by her in the Shadowhunter world is The Infernal Devices, and this is the first book in the companion series to that, because this follows the children of the characters in The Infernal Devices, and I love the characters in there so much. So this book really made me happy because I got to see all my old characters, and I thought the plot was actually really amazing. I was hooked, and I did not expect what happened in the end to actually happen. I also really loved the characters in here. I think they're a great addition to the Shadowhunter world, and I am really excited to continue and follow those characters even more. My next favorite book for the year is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I did not expect to love this book as much as I did, but I absolutely adored it. This book kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. This follows a girl named Pippa who, for her senior project, is investigating a murder that happened in her town a couple years ago. Pippa believes that the person that is assumed to have committed the murder did not actually commit the murder because there was no trial or anything. This is told in a very interesting format because it has files from her senior project and things that, like interviews and things that were going on, that she wanted to put into like her little, I guess, document. This had so many twists and turns, and it really dived into the life of the 2 characters, the one that's the presumed murderer and the one that did get murdered. So it really shows like the intricacies of people and that they're not always perfect and they're not always what they seem. And I really enjoyed that because I think a lot of times people can be like one-dimensional to a lot of the general public. This book really shows that people are not always what you think they are, and that they can get involved in things that are not seemingly perfect. So this book is definitely one of my favorites. I would highly recommend this book. Even though this is a YA thriller, I think it's an excellent thriller in general. I know a lot of people are put off by YA thrillers, but this one is actually amazing, and I just got the second book in the mail yesterday, so I'm super excited to continue on with that one. And my most recent favorite book that I read so far this year is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This book really surprised me because I thought that I would enjoy it, but I did not know that I would love it as much as I did. The mystery element really had me hooked in this book because I wanted to know what was going on. I know a lot of people are saying that the characters in this book are kind of replicas of some of her other ones, but I actually thought that they were very unique, and I really enjoyed the societal issues that were discussed throughout this novel. I really like the setting in this because it combines what we deem as old, like magic and things like that, with technology and what we have today, like phones and living in an apartment and going to clubs, like things that we do today combined with magic. I also like how this combined different supernatural creatures together. Like this has like fairies, sprites, angels, vampires, werewolves, and I just really enjoyed having a combination of all those things and seeing how they interact. This book was honestly really amazing. It's not perfect, but I loved every single second of it. So this book is definitely one of my favorites of the year so far. So question number 2 is best sequel that you've read so far. I actually have not read that many sequels this year. I read Heartstoppers volumes 1 through 3 this year, and my favorite volume out of those was 3, so I guess that would be my favorite sequel because that's really Heartstopper volume 2 and 3 are the only ones that I've read so far this year. But I really enjoyed the 3rd volume because I went to Paris last year and I love everything about Paris, and it really kind of put me back there. The characters in that series are also literally so cute. I just love seeing them together and seeing their new developing relationship, and it made me really happy to see them together in this volume. Question 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet but want to, and I have a couple for this one as well. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. This is about a trans boy, and I believe somebody finds out his dead name and finds pictures of him before he transitioned, and he has to deal with the aftermath of that and figuring out who is basically blackmailing him. And I've heard so many good things about this book. The cover is absolutely stunning, and I just got this the other day. I'm super excited to read this book soon. So the next one hasn't released yet, but I got a copy early from Book of the Month, and that is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I haven't heard anybody talk about this yet, but Gabby from Gabby Reads just posted a reading vlog of reading this, so I'm excited to see what she feels about it. I'm actually going to watch it right after this video, but I loved Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, which came out last year, so I'm super excited to see what this one has in store. This is about a girl who her dad got famous for writing like a memoir about this house and how it was haunted, so she goes back to the house to find out if it's really haunted or if it was kind of just made up. So I'm really liking the haunted house vibes, and I think Riley Sager does that really well, so I'm super excited to see like how spooky this book actually gets. And the last book that I want to talk about for this question is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I don't have a copy of this book yet, but I really want it because it's so gorgeous. I loved With the Fire and High by Elizabeth Acevedo, which I read last year. I think it was an amazing book. I haven't read The Poet X yet, but I really want to read that one as well. But this one kind of intrigues me a bit more. This one is about two sisters. One lives in the Dominican Republic and the other one lives in America, and they don't know anything about each other, and their dad goes back and forth between the Dominican Republic and America, basically having kind of two lives, I guess. And their dad suddenly gets into a plane crash, and it brings these two girls together, and they have to figure out like what their new relationship is gonna be. And I've heard amazing things about this so far, so I really want to get to this one hopefully next month. Question number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and I have a couple for this one as well. Like I literally have a couple for every single question in this tag. But the first one that I want to talk about is Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power, which comes out in July, and I'm super excited for this book because I read Wilder Girls by Rory Power last year and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite thing. But this book I think is going to be more to my taste, since that one was like a Lord of the Flies retelling, and I've never read that. I didn't know how much I was gonna like it, but I really loved like the horror elements, and I think that that is going to carry over into this book, so I'm super excited to see what else Rory Power is going to come out with. So the next book that I'm really anticipating is Blood and Honey, which is the second book to Serpent and Dove. I really loved Serpent and Dove. I know it's kind of a controversial book, you either love it or you hate it, but I really loved it. I really liked the French influence. The ending had a really big twist that I wasn't expecting, and I really loved it, so I'm excited to see how this book continues on in the series and to see the characters that I really love again. The next book I'm really excited for is Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I love the Stalking Jack the Ripper series by Carrie Maniscalco, so I'm excited to see what else she can write. I don't know anything about this book, but I'm super excited for it nonetheless because Carrie Maniscalco writes amazing characters, and I also think that she's really good at developing atmosphere, which I think she'll be able to do well in this. I think that she's going to also bring like those dark twisted vibes into this one as well. So the last book that I'm really anticipating for the second half of the year is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I am anticipating this book so much because it just sounds amazing. I haven't really read V.E. Schwab before, but I think I still trust her writing for some reason. I don't know why because I haven't really read it, but I think that this book's going to be really good. I believe this is about a French girl who falls in love with the devil, and it takes place over about 300 years. So I'm super excited for that because I think this book is going to be really dark, and I love dark twisted books. I also think that the fact that this is going to be over a long period of time is going to be really instrumental to how the book plays out. I just think that this book is going to be one of the best books that came out this year, so I'm really anticipating it. Question 5 is Biggest Disappointment, and for that I definitely have to go with The Other People by C.J. Tudor. I read this book for Kayla from Books and Lella's Literally Dead book club, and I didn't necessarily have high expectations for it, but I was excited to read it because the premise sounded really interesting, and it kind of just let me down. I felt like it was really lackluster. The ending just was kind of like meh, like I was like, okay, whatever. And then it continued on way past when I thought it should have stopped. And honestly, like, this book, I gave it 2.5 stars, but it was still one of my least favorite books of the whole year. And I just think that there's a lot better thrillers out there, and this unfortunately was not a good one. So it was definitely my most disappointing. Question 6 is Biggest Surprise, and for that I'm going to go with Jackpot by Nick Stone. I have not read a Nick Stone book before, but this one I just decided to pick up on a whim because my library had the audiobook, and I actually really enjoyed it. I think it had really dynamic characters. Rico is the female protagonist in this. I think she really showed what it's like to be poor and the struggles that can happen in a teenager's life when their parents kind of neglect them and just kind of put responsibilities on them. The male protagonist in this was also really amazing. You could see that he really cared about Rico, and I really loved their dynamic together. I also loved Rico's little brother in here and the struggles that he went through throughout this novel. The characters really were just amazing, so I'm super excited to read more of Nick Stone's work and see how amazing her other characters are. Question 7 is Favorite New Author, which is either debut or new to you, and I wouldn't really say that I have a new favorite author because most of the authors that I read this year I've either read before or I only read one book from, but I'm gonna go with Alice Oseman for this. Even though I only read Heartstopper from her, I think that she could become one of my favorite authors. I'm really excited to read Radio Silence by her because everybody loves it. I have not heard one bad thing about that book, and she's coming out with a new book this year, Loveless, which I'm also really anticipating because it has an asexual or aromantic main character. I think that she just has a lot of diversity in her novels, and I'm super excited to see if I like her work as much as I love Heartstopper. Question 8 is Newest Fictional Crush, and for that I'm definitely going to go with Hunt from Crescent City because Hunt is literally everything. I love him so much. I think that everything about him is just amazing. I feel like while he is like the shadow of death and he's supposed to be really scary, I don't really think he lives up to that. Like, yeah, he kills people, but it's not even that. He's like brooding a lot. He's very charismatic, which I really like. I feel like he is a bit more silent than like Rhysand, but he still is charismatic in his... I feel like he is a bit more silent than like Rhysand, but he's charismatic in his own way, and I love him for that. I just think that he's like one of the bros, and I like that he was like almost, I feel like he was realer to me because he did have things in his world that we have in ours, and I just love that he's like a little fallen angel, and I think it's so cute. I just love every single thing about him. Question 9 is Newest Favorite Character, and for that I'm gonna go with Pip from A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I love Pip and I just relate to her so much. She's the most relatable character that I've read this whole year for me specifically. And throughout this book she's dealing with writing her college essay and doing college applications. I'm also starting my college applications like right now, so I really relate. I also really related to her in the fact that she loves true crime and that she's investigating this case, because I feel like this is something, if this happened in my city, I feel like this is definitely a project that I would have done. And I really love that she went out and she was always investigating. It was always on her mind and she would not stop until she figured out what was going on. And I really relate to that because that's me. If I want to know something, I'm going to keep trying to investigate and dig deeper until I figure out what it is and what is actually the truth. So I definitely really related to Pip, and that's why she's one of my favorite characters I've read this year. Charlie and Nick from Heartstopper are also two of my favorite characters that I've read this year. I think that they're so cute and I just love them so much. I want to protect them. I think they're definitely an accurate depiction of teenagers now. I also loved all the side characters in there, so any character from Heartstopper is probably one of my new favorite characters. Alice Oseman really makes excellent characters. The next question is a book that made you cry, and I've only had one book made me cry this year, and that is Crescent City again. This book made me cry so hard at the end. I was crying like on and off for a good 2 hours because I just flew through the last half, and this book really played with my emotions because one second I'd be crying and then by the end of the page I'd be laughing, and then I wouldn't cry for like 5 pages and then I would just start sobbing. The friendship relationships in this really are what got me, and I loved how dedicated Bryce was to her friends and figuring out what happened. I really just love the friendship in this, and if you read it you know what happens at the end relating to Bryce's friendships, and it really just made me cry so hard, and this is the only book that's made me cry this year. So the next question is a book that made you happy, and for that I'm gonna go with Tweet Cute by Emery Lord. This book made me so happy because of the banter between the two main characters, because they have like a Twitter feud and they actually go to school together, so you see their banter online as well as in school, and I honestly love that. I also liked how the main male character in this had a really tight relationship with his family, including his grandma, his twin, and his parents, and I just loved seeing that, and this book just made me so happy. Question 12 is the most beautiful book that you bought or received this year, and a lot of the books that I've mentioned already are really gorgeous to me and I love the covers so much, but for the sake of not repeating, I'm gonna go with Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is a Puffin and Bloom edition, and I just love the gold foiling and the foliage on here. I love like leaves and things like that. I also like the style that the main characters are drawn in. I just think that it really brings a lot of life into the cover of this. So this would definitely be one of the most gorgeous books that I gotten this year. So the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I have a couple for this, but I definitely want to read a Stephen King by the end of the year, maybe two. This one is probably going to be the first one that I pick up. It's Pet Sematary, but I also own it, which I'm definitely not picking up this year, I can tell you that. I also own 11/22/63, which I might also pick up because everybody was raving about it a couple months ago, but I also might read like Carrie or something like that. But I definitely want to get into Stephen King and more horror novels throughout the second half of the year, especially because Halloween's coming. So I think that Stephen King is definitely one of my top priorities. There's also a lot of books that I have that are sequels that came out this year, and since I haven't read that many sequels for the first half of the year, I definitely want to focus on that a bit more in the second half of the year, like Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Young, which is the second book to Girls of Paper and Fire, which I loved. I read it last year and I gave it 4.5 or 5 stars. I definitely want to continue on with the series because I love the first book so much. I also told you guys already that I love Stalking Jack the Ripper, but I've only read the first 2 books in that series. I started Escaping from Houdini last year and I never finished it, so I definitely want to continue on in the series and maybe even read this book and the last book. I also want to get into adult fantasy this year because I don't think I've read an adult fantasy, and the one that's closest to me right now is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, but I also have a couple Brandon Sanderson books and things like that, so I'm not really sure which high fantasy I'm going to read, but this one I definitely want to get to this year anyways. But for the second half of the year, I really want to get into more adult fantasy, sequels, and horror, so hopefully that's what I'll really be able to tackle. So those are all the questions to the tag. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I would love to talk to you guys down in the comments below, and you guys can also talk to me on Twitter or Instagram, which I will have in the description box down below. Down in the description box I'll also have links to resources for the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as resources to learn more about Yemen and their humanitarian crisis going on right now. But that is all I have for this video today. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!